Okay, now we're on.
Here we go. All right, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. The past 5 months have been one giant whirlwind, COVID-19. COVID-19 has disrupted the world big time. The world has definitely changed. Human behavior has changed. And retail payment has certainly changed. Welcome to PageLink's webinar, Retail Payments Post-Corona Fraud and Conversion. I'm Yossi Geller, and with us is Asa Zeidman. We will be discussing several important issues relating to retail payments, obviously all in the backdrop of COVID-19. Our agenda today is full of interesting and important topics. Now, we were going to talk about how COVID has impacted retailers and e-commerce. Now, without doubt, COVID has impacted the world and retail. Now, we're going to talk about additional issues such as the challenges that retailers face when it comes to fraud and conversion. And we're going to talk about the million-dollar question, whether retailers can achieve it all. And the question is whether Asa, who's with us today, do you think you can achieve it all?
Well, I don't want to give any spoilers, but yes.
There you go. So we'll summarize with a Q&A session about 10 minutes at the end, and let's start. A little bit of background before we begin about Asa and myself. So Asa Zeidman here wears the intelligence hat at PageLink. He is the VP of Products, and he shapes the direction of all our creations. Asa comes with a ton of experience in fraud and in cyber. He's a true maestro. I am the VP of Marketing. I'm Yossi, and I wear the creative hat. I too have focused my career in cyber and fraud, and I've worked for organizations such as IBM, Trustier, Tetere, and others. So we're going to kick off the presentation, but we're going to talk a little bit about some kind of analysis, kind of analyzing the period that we're living in via news clippings from the past 3 or 4 months. Kind of a high-level observation of what the press is saying about Corona, about e-commerce, retail, and fraud. Asa, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Yossi. So we've all been seeing stuff regarding COVID-19, and naturally in our industry, we have focused and we have seen and we have heard the general talk about what's going on. We're hearing people talking about the demise of cash. For example, PayPal CEO talking specifically about this. I think we've all experienced the rise in online shopping and in mobile banking, which is quite natural. I mean, in this point in time, people tend to avoid going to brick and mortar stores, and they prefer doing things online. We'll look into actual numbers in a few minutes. And along with this great opportunity comes also a great challenge, which is fraud. And we can see how we have specifically at this point in time a huge problem with fraud. You can see on the right side a very recent study showing that retail fraud is skyrocketing. Now, this is something that usually happens during a crisis and during a pandemic, of course. That would be human behavior. And we see how specifically us as retailers, we have here a challenge with it. Now, when we look at actual numbers and not just at headlines, we see very interesting stuff. Looking, for example, at the bar chart on the left side, you can see that many verticals are experiencing a huge boom. I mean, looking at, for example, baby products, essential medical stuff, and household goods, specifically on cleaning, you can see they're all rising, and it makes perfect sense when thinking about it.
Now, Asa, I imagine that these type of goods are the kind of goods that can be easily liquidated, easily kind of sold on the black market. Do you think that has any implications?
Yes, of course. coming to think about these three verticals, baby products, medical goods, and household goods, they are all things which are very easy to liquidate, meaning that as a fraudster, they would be very lucrative to me. I mean, it would be very easy for me as a fraudster to buy them online, receive them, use, for example, a stolen credit card, and now I can easily sell these goods and have cash in exchange. So they are very lucrative for fraudsters. So some of the boom might be also as a result of more fraud there. Now, looking at actual numbers, we're seeing that all of these COVID-19 related trends are probably going to stay more than the pandemic itself. I mean, 36% of shoppers are saying they won't return to brick and mortar stores until a vaccine is available. Now, until we have a vaccine available, it would take probably months, if not more than that. So we're looking ahead at a quite long time where people are not going to return to brick and mortar stores. Now, even after COVID-19, we're expected to see this trend continuing. 68% of US shoppers are expecting to continue buying essential goods online. Now, this is a trend which started way before COVID-19. I mean, in the past years, you can see how e-commerce, how mCommerce is on the rise. There is a trend, there is a constant trend. And now, well, it's just being accelerated. So people are now finding out, many people that earlier did not have a chance to really experience e-commerce and mCommerce, well, now they just have to. And now, once they've gone e-commerce, they can't go back. They found out that it can indeed answer a lot of their needs. And eventually, when we're looking at fraud, we see that COVID-19 related fraud has already took a sum of more than $13 million from US American citizens. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but these are just the figures until April. And from April till today, I guess it probably grew a lot more. And taking into account that in the UK it was something like 16 million, well, we have here a large number. So indeed, e-commerce here is on the rise, and so is fraud. Now,
sorry, Asa, are you going to talk about the shift to e-commerce now? Okay.
I'll be happy, yeah. Now, the shift to e-commerce and the shift to mCommerce are not something new. It's not something which is purely as a result of COVID-19. We can see three main reasons for the shift for e-commerce, and well, at least two of them are unrelated to COVID-19. First one is that cash is no longer king. We are in the process of moving towards a cashless society. Now, again, even before COVID-19, you could have seen two main reasons, two main factors pushing towards a cashless society. And the first is the government. Now, for the government, it's quite obvious because having a cashless society, meaning a society where it's significantly harder to perform what is called money laundering. Once it's not cashless and every transaction is being documented, the government can know who transferred which amount to whom and what was given in return. It's a lot of data for the government, so naturally they're pushing towards that. A good example would be the Swedish government. A second factor would be the merchants themselves. Again, looking back 1 year, 2 years, meaning way before COVID-19, you could have seen in London, for example, food trucks refraining from accepting cash, having signs, no cash accepted. They would accept credit cards, they would accept mobile payments, they would not accept cash. And that's pretty clear why, because handling cash for merchants is quite a burden. And now when we have COVID-19, now we have a third factor pushing towards a cashless society, which is the consumers. Consumers now refrain from using physical cash. people perceive cash now as something dirty, something contaminated, something that might even carry diseases. Coins and banknotes are now considered as problematic, and actual people, refrain from using them. So that would be a third factor pushing towards a cashless society. Now, mobile payments are on the rise as well. And here again, even before COVID-19, we've all seen the shift from brick and mortar to online. And we're also seeing the shift of usage from laptop to mobile. And that makes perfect sense because using my mobile device I can do it everywhere. I can do it anywhere at my home. I can do it in bed. I can do it while walking down the street. I can do it while commuting. So it's much easier. The usage in mobile is on the rise. Payments in mobile are on the rise, and naturally, fraud in mobile is on the rise. And as a third reason shifting to mCommerce is, of course, COVID-19. And we're seeing here brick and mortar stores, and I'm talking here not about huge retailers and sophisticated merchants, but also mom and pop stores, grocery stores, neighborhood stores, quickly going online, quickly providing mobile applications, understanding that in these difficult times, people prefer, and sometimes people have no option but to use mobile applications. In times of lockdowns, in times of isolation, if you're a business without a solution, you're in, quite a huge problem. And we are seeing, again, the most low-tech stores suddenly having a mobile application, thus saving themselves and even gaining more profit.
So we're going to talk about the challenges of retailers now?
Yes. And we've talked about the opportunity because moving cashless, going to mobile payments, COVID-19 are all great opportunities for online retailers, for e-merchants, for m-merchants. But there are challenges as well. And the first one is fraud prevention. Now, not all merchants meet fraud. Let's say I'm a merchant who sells customized goods, such as t-shirts saying, all men are created equal, but only those born in February are the best. I can guess that they are suffering less from fraud because, again, we've mentioned liquidity before. As a fraudster, it would be very hard for me to liquidate a box filled of these t-shirts. Only 1/12 of the population would be interested in them in the first place, if at all. But putting them aside, we have a huge spectrum of retailers, huge number of merchants for which fraud is a problem because now when they have a new user, they need to decide very quickly, is that user legitimate or not? Now this new user is going to use a new credit card. Is this credit card legitimate or not? And they have to take this decision very quickly. So indeed, this is a challenge. And failing to meet this challenge might be very problematic because in addition to monetary loss and actual loss of products, you might have a reputation problem. You might have a problem with your acquirer. Now, if you have your risk level is too high, you would pay higher fees, not to talk about acquirers refusing handling you. So this is a real challenge. And in addition to preventing fraud, there's customer experience. And here, I believe the retailers and merchants here in the webinar know this much better than me. Customer experience means a lot. If I'm a retailer with a mediocre customer experience and my competition has a superb customer experience, people would prefer going to that competitor. And we're going to show numbers specifically regarding this in a couple of slides. So customer experience is a challenge. Now, of course, if I have a problematic customer experience, it would have impact on the conversion rate. I would have, I would lose people. I would have cart abandonment, and that's where my revenue is. But it's important to remember that not only customer experience has an effect on conversion, but also fraud prevention. Let's say I'm a merchant, and let's say I have a very aggressive fraud prevention tool. Now, its aggressiveness is also it also comes to place by having a high level of false positives, meaning good users, great potential users that are being declined, although they should have been approved, meaning I've just lost them. They would have completed the process. I would have had them as customers, but now they were rejected and it wasn't their fault. So fraud prevention also affects conversion.
Now, also, you know that retailers often face a dilemma between fraud prevention and user experience. From your perspective, from your experience, do you think that they can deal with that dilemma well? This is where we talk about achieving it all. What do you think?
Well, today, many merchants, many sellers are facing indeed this dilemma, this trade-off. Where should I put my emphasis? If I put my emphasis on fraud prevention, well, I can have very strict, very aggressive tools that would prevent fraud to some extent. I would be safe, but the user experience would probably be impacted. A good example here is 3D Secure. Having an additional step, sending one-time passwords, all of this in order to make sure that indeed the cardholder is indeed the person who is now buying. This affects the user experience. And let's say I'm a retailer and I understand how much user experience matters, and I'm trying to do this frictionless experience, minimum number of clicks, minimum number of taps until the user reaches the Pay Now button, and following that, again, minimum intervention. If I'm trying to do so today, in many cases, I'm taking a risk that my fraud would go up, because if I'm not checking in any way who my user is, what device are they using, I might be putting myself at risk. So today, many merchants are trying to reach a sweet spot, but this sweet spot, in many cases, becomes, let's call it, a good enough spot. I'm getting a good enough fraud prevention and a good enough user experience at best, and that sounds like a compromise to me. It's not optimal. It's far from being optimal. It's something which is, meh. And in many cases, meh is just not enough. And personally, I know you can reach a much better solution. You can reach here an optimum. You can reach a point where you have a great level of fraud prevention and a superb customer experience without any friction.
That's interesting. At this point, can you talk a little bit about the types of fraud that retailers are facing, the kind of things that they are dealing with on a regular basis?
Of course. Here at PageLint, we see it in the field. We see real live cases, and I must say it's most interesting. I can't think of doing anything else. And here, retailers have encountered fraud for years now. Now in mobile, it's focusing on specific attack scenarios, and specifically in the last few months, we're seeing three main attack scenarios. The first one would be what is called new account fraud, where as a fraudster, I'm creating a new account, a fake account based on a stolen identity or on a true identity of a person who's not a user yet. Using a totally fake identity is much harder for the fraudster. Usually I would try to steal an identity of a person, some person from somewhere, and create a fake account at the merchant's service. Now, why would I do that? Because that would enable me to have transaction fraud, meaning I would obtain credit card details, buying a huge dump in the dark web or even from old school ways. And now I'm going to use this new fake account in order to buy goods and have them being shipped to me or to an address which I control. Now, these goods could be physical goods, and then they can be sent to these addresses, or even better for me as a fraudster, digital goods. Because digital goods, I don't have to provide a physical shipping address, and there is an expectation that the digital goods, may it be a gift card, downloadable content, cryptocurrency, the expectation is that I would receive this immediately, because as a legitimate user, I would expect to get it immediately. I mean, it's digital, why should I wait? And here it's a huge challenge for the retailers. They need to decide at once, at the moment, in real time, whether it's a legitimate purchase or a fraudulent one. And if they have here a false positive, well, they've now declined a perfectly good user who was willing to pay. And if it's a false negative, well, they're going to lose. They're going to lose the goods that they're sending, and they're going to lose the money, and they're going to lose reputation with their acquirer.
Now, I would imagine that in this Corona period, that the urgency of a shipment like that needs to be taken into account. And do fraudsters kind of leverage on that?
Yes, of course they do. Fraudsters, just like any other businessman, they are aiming at the weak spots. They would prefer doing what's easy. And today, indeed, in this COVID-19 times, legitimate people, expect their delivery to be done immediately, because everybody's now gone e-commerce, everybody's gone mobile. The expectation is for an immediate shipment. Now, we have seen with merchants that approached us, they have suffered exactly this type of fraud. They have this mobile application in which fraudsters have created fake accounts and used credit cards. Now, this application had a very strict policy. They enabled only one credit card per one account. So what did the fraudsters do? They took a single mobile device. They obtained a huge number of credit cards, and now they have created the first fake account and used the first credit card. Now they have purchased again and again and again, having the goods being collected from the spot until the credit card maxed out. Once the card was maxed out, no problem at all. Same mobile device, creating a new user using the second stolen credit card, running with it, maxing it out, and then again creating a third account on the same mobile device, maxing the third card out, and so and so. So here we've seen how the combination of new account fraud and transaction fraud is working very well for the fraudsters, especially in these COVID-19 times. And eventually, there's a good old account takeover, in which, as a fraudster, I'm stealing credentials of an existing user at a service, meaning there is an existing account and I'm taking over this account. Now, one might ask themselves, how do these fraudsters get these credentials? Where here as well, as a fraudster, I can buy data dumps in the dark web with usernames, passwords, but I can also be more initiative. For example, I can go on a phishing expedition, meaning having a very simple phishing site, sending text messages to a huge population. And there would be some people who would be fooled to click on the link, go to the phishing site and provide their credentials. Now here, it doesn't really matter if the website is phishing for service A and I'm service B, because people tend to reuse their passwords. So as a fraudster, if I got now credentials for service A, no problem at all. I'll try to use them for service B and service C and service D and service E. And usually that would work. Now, there are a bit more sophisticated users who are slightly changing their passwords, but you can count on the fraudsters. They have now machine learning tools, which are solving the way to how to generate a password per service. So even that's not enough. And once a person falls for the phishing site, well, they're probably going to get some account being taken over.
Very cool. How about retailers in relation to customer experience? And what do you think about that issue? Can you expand on that?
Sure. And here I'm feeling like, in this specific webinar, like I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, all the retailers here, all the merchants here know very well the importance of customer experience. And here we have also some numbers to back it up. 32% of customers will walk away from a brand that they love, a brand that they're emotionally attached to after one single bad experience. And buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. Now, customer experience also includes the trust, the feeling of safety. Users who believe that they are in higher risk, well, that's a problem. And people are worried about entering their information online. Now, here we can think, okay, how can we handle it? Let's think of a 3D Secure. But I believe the merchants and retailers here who work with the United States are well aware of the problems of using 3D Secure in the United States. It has a huge impact on the conversion rate because posing all of these obstacles in front of the user, sending text messages, one-time passwords, any other types of passwords, well, you can only lose here. I mean, it's some protection against fraud, but in customer experience, you actually lose here good purchases.
So I guess this is where we come to the question of whether retailers can achieve it all. And I gather this is where you sell the idea.
Yes, I think that retailers can have it all, meaning you can block fraud, you can prevent fraud in a very high level while maintaining a great user experience, a frictionless user experience. Now, how can you achieve that? Well, first, I must say it's not easy. It can't be done just in a whim. It requires a very broad perspective. You need first to look at the actual physical device. For example, as a retailer, when a new device approaches your application, you should identify whether it's a new device that you haven't been before or a returning device. You would treat them completely differently, naturally. If it's a new device, is it a legitimate device? An easy example here would be, is the device an emulator? Because a legitimate user would not approach using an emulator. If you see an emulator, well, it's probably a problematic user. And of course, geolocation and network connection go without saying.
Asa, 1 second. I don't know what network connection refers to. Can you expand on that?
Of course. When talking about network connection, we should look at the device and ask ourselves, is this device trying to mask itself? Is it trying to hide? Is it trying to fake its data? For example, is this device behind a proxy, behind some sort of an anonymizer? Is it using a Tor connection? Again, our legitimate common user would not use these tools. Now, the same questions that we have asked regarding the device, we should ask regarding the user. Is it a new user or a returning user? Naturally, you would treat them differently. If it's a new user, is it a legitimate one by nature, or is it fraudulent by nature? And if it's a returning user, is it really the returning user? Meaning, okay, they provided the username and password, but do they behave the same inside the application? Meaning, are they going through the same sequence of screens and same sequence of fields that they always do? And about their biometrics, are they handling the device in the same manner? And eventually you need to cross-reference the information that you get from the user and cross-reference it, make sure that indeed the user is legitimate.
Now, when you say behavioral biometrics, and I think I heard you say behavioral biometrics, do you mean how a person holds the phone?
That's one of the factors, yes. We've talked earlier regarding the trend of moving from desktop to mobile. And one of the interesting things in mobile that you can see the physical interaction between the person and her device. You can see the angle that the user is holding her device, whether it's with the right hand or left hand. How is the user scrolling, with long movements or short movements? Is the user pressing the device with a hard force or weak force? If you take this and many more into account, you can create a biometric profile per user, thus knowing if it's indeed the same user returning or not. And eventually, you should look at the transaction itself, meaning at the actual purchase. Is it according to pattern, meaning is the user buying what she's usually buying? Is she paying the amount that she's usually paying? And where is she shipping the goods to? Is it the regular address that she's usually sending? Or is it a new one? And if it's a new one, does it make sense? At what time of day does she usually perform her purchases? And of course, you should look at velocity, meaning having a burst of purchases in a very short time. If it's not according to the user's regular behavior, well, we should definitely look into this. So if you take everything into account, the device, the user, the purchase, and you look at them at a whole, you can reach a good conclusion whether this purchase is fraudulent or legitimate. And all of this can be done behind the scenes. You don't need to ask the user for anything here. So you can have a fantastic fraud prevention while having a true frictionless customer experience.
Wow, that was really insightful. Thanks, Asa. That was great. We're going to take a few questions. I see that we have a number of questions here. Let me take a look. Yeah. One of the questions here is asking about PageLint itself. How do you guys do it? What is your methodology? Can you expand on that, Asa?
I don't understand.
Of course. Oh, we've just woken up my my Google Home. Nice. Well, here at PageLint, what we do, we prevent fraud while providing a true frictionless customer experience for mobile applications, for mobile merchants, for mobile retailers. Now, how do we do it? Well, it's actually the last slide that I was talking about. What we do, we have this very broad perspective. We look at the device, we look at the user, we look at the actual purchase. When we look at the device, we look at the device DNA, which is the next generation of device fingerprinting. We look at the user space, so we can know whether it's a returning device, a new user, a returning user, and whether they are fraudulent by nature or legitimate by nature. Then we look at the users themselves, meaning looking at their behavior inside the application, their flow through the application. We're looking at their biometric profile. We cross-reference the insights we get from the application, and then we look at the purchase itself. We look at its patterns, and we understand whether the purchase is fraudulent or legitimate. And we provide the application with one simple risk score, low risk or high risk. And we provide it as a recommendation so the application can choose how to act. Naturally, we recommend that if it's a low risk score, let the user go through, let the user purchase, no need to put any kinds of step-up authentication. If we say it's a very high risk, well, it's a fraudster. We recommend to decline the purchase, of course. So this is how we do it. This is how we provide protection against fraud while having a frictionless customer experience.
Thanks, that was good. Another question that we have here is asking about integration. How complex is the process, your integration process? Yeah, can you expand on that, please?
Of course, I totally understand why this question is being asked, and specifically now. At these times, nobody has the capacity, nobody has the time, nobody has the budget now to go into some kind of a multi-month project of integration. That's why we designed our solution to be quick, simple, and easy. Our integration, technically speaking and business speaking, is very simple. It shouldn't take too much time. And we provide value from day one. There's no need now to wait for months until the machine learning models kick in. We know, based on our intelligence, to identify fraudulent devices, fraudulent users from day one. So what we offer here is actually a very short, very simple process of integration, followed by immediate value given from the day you go live.
We have another question here from Omar, and I gather it relates to 3D Secure. So Omar's asking, do I still need to use 3D Secure in relation to our to Pagelint's offering? Can you expand on that?
Of course. Well, 3D Secure is a tool that we have all used for years in order to prevent fraud, and it has its downsides, of course. Now, you can implement the Pagelint solution in broad ways with or without 3D Secure. I can think of two main scenarios. In one scenario, let's take the complex one, just to make it more interesting. Let's say I'm a merchant and I'm a high-risk merchant, and I'm using today 3D Secure as a solution. If I use Pagelint, then I don't have to use 3D Secure every time. For example, if it's a user that Pagelint has flagged as a safe one, then no need for 3D Secure. Pagelint is very clear about this user. Pagelint knows that this user is safe. No need to place an additional obstacle in front of the user. Let this user go through, let this user purchase, no need for 3D Secure. However, let's take a scenario where Pagelint says, this user is problematic, something here is wrong. We have a suspicion of, let's say, account takeover. In these cases, you can point the user to 3D Secure because here we have a good reason to suspect that something here is wrong. Give this user a way to prove herself as good. If she passes 3D Secure, well, that's nice. She has now provided some kind of proof that she holds the credit card, everything is okay, and the liability has been shifted. Let's remember that. But if she fails 3D Secure, well, no harm done, because Pagelint has already flagged her as a high risk. So this would be a great way to combine Pagelint with 3D Secure, having 3D Secure used only for the problematic users. Users for which we are confident with, let them go through. No need for 3D Secure.
Thanks, Asa. I think that we're actually running out of time, so I wanted to thank you, Asa, again.
Thank you.
And for anyone who has additional questions or we didn't cover issues that are of interest to you, please send it to us and we'll answer it right away. And thank you, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thanks very much. Stay safe.